Leonardo DiCaprio is trapped in the strangest time loop in Hollywood history. For over 2 decades, he's been living the exact same life pattern over and over again. He dates a model who's exactly 25 years old, breaks up with her before she turns 26, then immediately finds another 25-year-old model to replace her. Meanwhile, he makes movies about climate change while flying private jets around the world, preaches about saving the environment while partying on massive yachts, and spent 22 years desperately chasing an Oscar that everyone knew he deserved but somehow kept slipping away. This is the story of one of the world's biggest movie stars who seems to be stuck repeating the same choices, the same relationships, and the same contradictions year after year, and why breaking free from this pattern might be impossible for him. Leonardo DiCaprio's story starts like a Hollywood fairy tale. He was born in Los Angeles in 1974, named after the famous artist Leonardo da Vinci because his pregnant mother felt him kick for the first time while looking at a Da Vinci painting in Italy. From the very beginning, it seemed like he was destined for greatness, marked by art and creativity before he was even born. As a child actor, Leo was different from other kids trying to make it in Hollywood. While most child stars were cute and innocent, Leo had this intensity and intelligence that made directors take notice. He appeared in commercials, TV shows, and small movie roles throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, slowly building a reputation as a serious young actor who could handle complex material. Then came 1993, and everything changed. Leo was cast in What's Eating Gilbert Grape alongside Johnny Depp, playing a mentally disabled teenager named Arnie. His performance was so convincing and heartbreaking that many people thought the producers had actually cast someone with a disability. At just 19 years old, Leo earned his first Oscar nomination, and Hollywood realized they had found something special. But it was Romeo and Juliet in 1996 that turned Leonardo DiCaprio into a global superstar. Baz Luhrmann's modern adaptation of Shakespeare's classic love story made Leo the heartthrob of an entire generation. Teenage girls around the world had his posters on their bedroom walls, and suddenly he wasn't just a talented actor, he was a cultural phenomenon. Then came Titanic in 1997, and Leonardo DiCaprio's life changed forever in ways that he probably never expected. James Cameron's epic love story became the highest-grossing film of all time, making over $2 billion worldwide and turning Leo into one of the most famous people on the planet. Jack Dawson became an iconic character, and Leo's romantic chemistry with Kate Winslet made millions of people fall in love with love itself. But Titanic's massive success created a problem that would haunt Leo for the next 2 decades. While the film made him incredibly wealthy and famous, it also typecast him as a pretty boy romantic lead. Critics and industry insiders didn't take him seriously as an actor, dismissing him as just another handsome face who got lucky with a blockbuster movie. The same success that made him a household name also made it harder for him to be seen as a serious artist. Leo seemed to realize this problem almost immediately. Instead of capitalizing on his heartthrob status with more romantic comedies or action movies, he made a deliberate choice to work with the most respected directors in Hollywood and take on challenging, unglamorous roles. He wanted to prove that he was more than just Jack Dawson, more than just a pretty face that teenage girls screamed for. This decision marked the beginning of what we can now see as Leonardo DiCaprio's life pattern. He would spend the next 25 years trying to escape the shadow of Titanic, constantly proving himself as a serious actor while simultaneously living a lifestyle that seemed designed to confirm every stereotype about shallow Hollywood movie stars. It was like he was trying to be 2 completely different people at the same time. After Titanic, Leo embarked on what can only be described as an Oscar campaign that lasted over 2 decades. He systematically chose projects and directors that were known for creating award-worthy performances. He worked with Martin Scorsese on Gangs of New York, The Aviator, The Departed, Shutter Island, and The Wolf of Wall Street. He collaborated with Christopher Nolan on Inception, Alejandro González Iñárritu on The Revenant, and Quentin Tarantino on Django Unchained and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Each of these films showcased Leo's range and dedication as an actor. In The Aviator, he portrayed the obsessive genius Howard Hughes with incredible attention to detail. In The Departed, he held his own alongside veteran actors like Jack Nicholson and Matt Damon. In Inception, he anchored one of the most complex science fiction films ever made. With each performance, he proved that he was far more than the pretty boy from Titanic. But year after year, award season after award season, Leo would be nominated for Oscars and then watch as the award went to someone else. It became a running joke in Hollywood and among movie fans. Leo's Oscar losses became almost as famous as his performances. People started rooting for him not just because they liked his movies, but because they felt bad that he kept getting snubbed by the Academy. The Oscar obsession revealed something deeper about Leonardo DiCaprio's psychology. Here was someone who had achieved almost everything possible in Hollywood: massive commercial success, critical acclaim, wealth, fame, and respect from his peers. But the one thing that eluded him was the industry's ultimate stamp of approval. The Academy Award became a symbol of validation that he desperately wanted but couldn't quite reach. While Leo was building his reputation as one of Hollywood's most serious actors, his personal life was following a completely different script. In the early 2000s, people started noticing a strange pattern in his romantic relationships. Leo seemed to exclusively date models, and not just any models, but models who were exactly 25 years old. And without exception, these relationships would end right around the time his girlfriends turned 26. The pattern was so consistent that it became impossible to ignore. Gisele Bündchen, Barbara Farelli, Blake Lively, Erin Heatherton, Tony Garn, Kelly Rohrbach, Nina Agdal, Camila Morrone, all models, all gorgeous, all in their early 20s when they started dating Leo, and all single again before their 26th birthdays. It was like Leo had some kind of internal alarm clock that went off the moment his girlfriends entered their late 20s. This dating pattern became one of the most talked about aspects of Leo's life, spawning countless memes, jokes, and think pieces about what it meant. Some people found it funny, others found it creepy, and many found it just plain weird. How could someone who seemed so intelligent and thoughtful in his career choices be so predictable and seemingly shallow in his personal relationships? The pattern also highlighted the contradiction at the heart of Leo's public persona. Here was someone who made movies about serious social issues, who gave passionate speeches about climate change and social justice, who presented himself as a thoughtful and conscious global citizen. But his personal life suggested someone who was stuck in an endless cycle of superficial relationships with much younger women who he discarded the moment they showed signs of aging. Perhaps even stranger than Leo's dating pattern was his relationship with environmental activism. Starting in the late 1990s, Leonardo DiCaprio became one of Hollywood's most vocal advocates for fighting climate change. He established the Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation in 1998, focusing on environmental conservation, biodiversity protection, and climate change awareness. He produced and narrated documentaries about environmental destruction, gave speeches at the United Nations about the urgent need for climate action, and used his Oscar acceptance speech in 2016 to talk about global warming. Leo's environmental activism seemed genuine and passionate. He clearly cared deeply about these issues and used his fame and wealth to bring attention to causes that might otherwise be ignored. His foundation has donated millions of dollars to environmental organizations around the world, and his documentaries have educated millions of people about the reality of climate change. But there was a problem with Leo's environmental activism that became increasingly hard to ignore. While he was preaching about the need to reduce carbon emissions and live more sustainably, his own lifestyle was anything but environmentally friendly. Leo regularly flew around the world on private jets, one of the most carbon-intensive forms of transportation available. He owned multiple massive homes in different countries, vacationed on enormous yachts that burned thousands of gallons of fuel, and lived a lifestyle that produced more carbon emissions in a year than most people produce in a lifetime. This contradiction became a source of endless criticism and mockery. Climate change deniers and political opponents would point to Leo's lifestyle as evidence that even environmental activists didn't really believe in the causes they promoted. If Leo truly believed that climate change was an urgent crisis, why was he living like someone who didn't care about carbon emissions at all? By 2015, Leonardo DiCaprio's Oscar drought had become one of the most famous running jokes in Hollywood. He had been nominated 4 times for acting Oscars and had never won. Fans, critics, and even other celebrities were openly campaigning for him to finally get the recognition he deserved. The pressure was enormous, and everyone knew that Leo was running out of time to win an Oscar while he was still in his prime. Then came The Revenant, and Leo's most physically demanding performance ever. Playing Hugh Glass, a frontiersman who survives a bear attack and crawls through the wilderness for revenge, Leo put his body through incredible punishment. He ate raw fish and bison liver, slept inside animal carcasses, endured freezing temperatures, and performed stunts that most actors would leave to professionals. The stories of his dedication and suffering during the filming became legendary. When the Oscar nominations were announced, Leo was nominated again, and this time it felt different. The narrative was perfect. Leo had literally suffered for his art, enduring physical hardship that went far beyond what any role should require. If he didn't win for The Revenant, many people felt he might never win at all. On February 28, 2016, Leonardo DiCaprio finally won his first Oscar for Best Actor. His acceptance speech was emotional and focused on climate change, bringing his environmental activism to the biggest stage in entertainment. After 22 years and 5 nominations, Leo had finally achieved the validation he had been seeking since Titanic made him famous. But winning the Oscar didn't seem to change Leo's patterns at all. He continued dating 25-year-old models, continued flying private jets while preaching about climate change, and continued making the same choices that had defined his adult life. The Oscar had been the goal for so long that when he finally achieved it, he seemed unsure of what to do next. Even after winning the Oscar and proving himself as one of the greatest actors of his generation, Leonardo DiCaprio's life patterns remained remarkably consistent. He continued making prestige films with respected directors, continued his environmental activism, and continued his predictable romantic relationships with much younger models. In 2017, at age 42, Leo started dating Camila Morrone, who was 20 years old at the time. The relationship followed the exact same pattern as all his previous relationships, except this time people were paying even more attention because the age gap was larger than ever. Camila was closer in age to Leo's Titanic co-star Kate Winslet's daughter than she was to Leo himself. The relationship with Camila lasted longer than most of Leo's previous relationships, giving some people hope that maybe he was finally ready to break his pattern and settle down with someone. But in August 2022, just a few months after Camila turned 25, news broke that Leo and Camila had broken up. The pattern had held once again, as predictable as clockwork. This consistency in Leo's personal life is fascinating because it contrasts so sharply with his professional evolution. As an actor, he has continued to grow, experiment, and take on new challenges. His performances in recent films like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood show an actor who is still discovering new aspects of his craft. But in his personal life, he seems frozen in time, repeating the same choices and patterns that he established in his 20s. So why is Leonardo DiCaprio trapped in these patterns? Why does someone who seems so intelligent and self-aware in his professional life make such predictable choices in his personal life? The answer might lie in the unique pressures and circumstances of his particular type of fame. Leo became famous at a very specific moment in pop culture history, right as the internet was beginning to document and analyze every aspect of celebrity life. His patterns became public knowledge not because he wanted them to be, but because his every move has been scrutinized and catalogued for over 2 decades. Once the patterns were established and became part of his public identity, breaking them became almost impossible. There's also the question of what Leo's patterns actually represent. His environmental activism, despite the contradictions, has genuinely raised awareness about climate change and donated millions of dollars to important causes. His dating choices, while predictable, are between consenting adults and don't appear to harm anyone. His career choices have resulted in some of the best films and performances of the past 25 years. Maybe Leonardo DiCaprio's time loop isn't a prison but a comfort zone. After the chaos and unpredictability of his early fame, maybe he found a way of living that works for him and decided to stick with it. His patterns might seem strange to outside observers, but they've allowed him to maintain his privacy, his career, and his causes while living exactly the life he wants to live. The real question is whether Leo even wants to break free from his patterns. From the outside, his life might seem repetitive and contradictory, but from his perspective, he might have found the perfect balance between public responsibility and private pleasure. He makes important films, supports important causes, and enjoys his personal life without hurting anyone or breaking any laws. In a culture that's obsessed with growth, change, and evolution, maybe Leonardo DiCaprio's consistency is actually radical. While everyone else is constantly reinventing themselves and chasing new experiences, Leo has found a formula that works and stuck with it for 25 years. His time loop might not be a trap but a choice, a way of maintaining stability and control in an industry and culture that thrives on chaos and unpredictability. Whether you find Leo's patterns amusing, annoying, or admirable, you have to admit they're remarkable in their consistency. In a world where nothing stays the same for long, Leonardo DiCaprio has managed to live the same life, make the same choices, and maintain the same contradictions for over 2 decades. That might be the most impressive performance of his entire career.